Well, thank you all for coming out on this Sunday. I know we have the Patriots game to look forward to a little bit later today, so we will certainly get you out in time to get home for the game. But I appreciate you all being here. And before we get things kicked off, I want to recognize Senator John Morgan, whose son Thomas is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This one? All right.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks again for coming out today. It is really critical that we have conversations like this, not just at one point in time, but continuously, and they need to be happening in Washington, D.C. as well. I think we are in the situation we are in today because we have stopped listening to one another and relating to each other and hearing each other out. And so if we're going to renew our ability as a country to do that, it starts in town halls like this in the state of New Hampshire. It starts in a historic place like this in the town of Exeter. I'm really appreciative that there are town officials who have joined us here today, members of the state legislature, the state senator representing Exeter who came out today, and all of you. I really look forward to the conversation that we're about to have. Now, I'm someone who doesn't believe or pretend that I have all the answers, so I will do my best to answer your questions. And I know that we'll all be respectful of one another. I mean, I think when we see the tone of our politics, more generally speaking, we know we all have to take it upon ourselves to respect the views of others, even where we may differ. And so I know we will all do that today in true New Hampshire fashion. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can over the next hour or so. So I'd ask that you keep your question or comment to just a couple of minutes so we can entertain as many as possible today. So on January 3rd, the new Congress was sworn in, and I'm really honored to have the confidence and support of the voters of New Hampshire's 1st District. I took the oath of office to the Constitution of the United States with many new members of Congress, in fact, the largest incoming class since Watergate. So I think that says something about what's happening out there. And I never thought I'd be coming into office with the government shutdown. And I am so disturbed that now we are facing the longest shutdown in the history of this country, 23 days. We are disrespecting the federal workers. There are 800,000 individuals who are either on the job today without a paycheck, and Friday was supposed to be payday. They received pay stubs that said $0 on them. And then we have lots of furloughed workers who are deemed non-essential even though they deliver really basic services to the American people. This has an impact on all of us. It has an impact in terms of our food safety, has an impact in terms of the safety of our roads. It has an impact in terms of airport safety. Our air traffic controllers and TSA agents are on the job without pay right now. And so many aspects of our lives are touched by this, and the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to get. We have got to find a way to end it. But I believe that there should be no political hostage taking in Washington, D.C., that we should not wrap political issues into whether or not we will fund basic functions of government. There should be no question about that. And so going forward, I will work with anyone to pass funding bills that will reopen the doors of government, make sure that we adhere to the duty that we were sent there to perform, that we will respect the workers of this country, and we will do it in a way where we can have any conversation beyond that about how we keep America safe, about how we can reform a broken immigration system. Let's have all those conversations and let the chips fall where they may and come to some common understandings about how we can make things better, but let's not hold our government hostage over it. So with that, I would love to hear your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, and we'll have a few folks from our congressional office who are out there with microphones. They'll come up to you so you can ask your question. I will also note that you have information on your seats about how you can contact us. And I really want to make sure that we're accessible and available to you all at any point in time where you need to call on us. That's the most important part of this job, in my mind, is being accessible to the constituents of the 1st District of New Hampshire. So with that, thank you again for being here, and I would love to hear your thoughts and your questions. Thanks.
I'm not shy, I'll go first.
Good.
So New Hampshire, thankfully, has a provision that says we can't move forward in a new year without balancing our budget. Why don't we have that at the federal level? And why are people allowed to just say, oh, I'm not gonna work, I'm gonna go home this weekend, and not finish their job?
You wouldn't run the state of New Hampshire by the same rules that the federal government operates. You wouldn't run your business, your household the same way either. So it's really disturbing to me that, you know, I'm coming into office, that we're starting off our business so hopeful about what we can accomplish over the next couple of years, and inheriting a system that's broken. And this isn't new. We've seen these shutdowns over a period of time, over the last many years and decades. There isn't regular budgeting in Congress. Things get kicked down the road. There isn't the long-term planning that you would hope our federal government would do. And so we end up with these patchwork solutions where we have continuing resolutions that then become these political flashpoints. And so I think we have to take a step back and figure out, how do we prevent this from happening in the future? And I think it involves reforming the appropriations process, reforming how budgets are done in Congress, and that look for ways to put in place some more meaningful frameworks that are going to allow us to do better. But I think it also involves listening to people. Because if you were listening to the American people, whether you're the president, a member of the House, or a member of the Senate, you would never have voted against appropriations bills that would have kept government funded and kept things moving forward. So I think it's going to take us being willing to sacrifice some of our political points of views and positions to do the right thing. And so I believe we've got to make sure that this is the last shutdown. There are ways that we can continue to reform Congress, but I think it also comes down to that conversation and being willing to hear the voices of the people that are really disgusted right now. And I think we also can never lose sight of the fact that there are so many people who are in federal service right now that are trying to do the right thing for their country. They enjoy being in a position where they can serve the American people. We're either preventing them from doing that right now, or we're not honoring that work with a paycheck. And as a local business owner, that's just abhorrent to me. That's why I've turned down a paycheck during the shutdown. I'm going to donate it to charity. And I think I've actually signed on to legislation that would prevent Congress from being paid in future shutdowns. Because I think that if members of Congress felt the same pain that our federal workers do, or that the American people are, we'd be much less likely to get into this situation in the future.
Thank you. Anthony Zwan from Exeter. First of all, congratulations on your election, and thank you for coming out today. Can you tell me what committees, or do you know what committees you are assigned to, and what you feel passionate about, and what you think you can accomplish given the current balance of power in the next 2 years?
Thanks for that question. What I've been learning is that things take a lot longer in Washington than you would expect. So we were told by the first of the year we'd know our committee assignments. That date has come and gone. We don't know yet. We're hearing later next week, we'll find out. But I've put in for a few committees that I think have relevance to New Hampshire, and ultimately the work that I do in Congress has got to be supporting what people are looking for here. So I've put in for the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee as my top choice. I've also put in as a top choice for our Armed Services Committee. Carol Shea Porter has long served on armed services. That's critical in supporting the shipyard, which is a large employer and a driver of the economy on the seacoast of Maine and New Hampshire. And I've also put in for the Veterans Affairs Committee. As you probably have read and know, there are significant challenges in the VA, especially here in New Hampshire, which is one of the only states without a full-service hospital. We continue to need to do more work to improve outcomes, improve services that are offered, improve staffing levels, and so that committee would afford an opportunity to dig into some of those issues in a more meaningful way. So those are my top 3 choices, and we'll see what happens. I guess we'll find out later this week. But that doesn't prevent me from getting involved in a number of other important issues. whether it is around water contamination, whether it's around climate change, gun violence, whether it's around the right to choose or LGBT rights. Those are some other areas where I took strong positions during the campaign, and I hope to find ways to be contributing over the next couple of years. Thanks.
Thank you. Byron Petrakis from Kingston. I was one of your volunteers during the campaign. You're very welcome. My question is, what is Congress doing to not only protect voting rights, but expand them?
This is a critical question because I believe that our democracy is slowly being eroded by a number of things. By gerrymandered districts where politicians are picking their voters instead of the other way around. By legislation, some of which we've seen at our State House, which tells young people and students that they're not welcome to participate in our elections. And what a thing to do in a state that needs to encourage more young people to locate here, put down roots, and start their careers here. And we also have seen some instances across the country, from North Carolina to Georgia, where there are widespread voter suppression efforts underway. So I think we have to make sure we secure the right to vote and that we reform our political system so that it operates more like our founders intended. That's why I've signed on to co-sponsor a bill called H.R. 1, which is a democracy reform package, which contains in it several important provisions that I think are really exciting and innovative. One, around campaign finance reform. It's going to empower members of Congress and candidates who raise money in small increments from within their own districts. It's going to look to implement new transparency requirements so that these super PACs that are spending obscene amounts of money in our elections, that we know we can follow the money and see where exactly it's coming from. It's also going to implement new ethics rules for members of Congress and for public officials. We've got to look for ways to end the revolving door between Congress and lobbying and ensure that we can end the culture of corruption in Washington, D.C. And in addition to that, it's going to look to support automatic voter registration nationally, to require states to have independent commissions to draw congressional districts, to require a period of 20 days of early voting in federal elections. I think we've got to look for ways to make sure we encourage participation, which is at high levels in our state, but it can be higher, to make sure that everyone's right to participate is respected, that everyone's voices are heard. I think that the big corporations and the special interests and the moneyed interests, they get their fair share in terms of public policies that are pushed in Washington, D.C. We've got to make sure that everyday Americans have the same shot. I'll do my best to try to represent all your views and all the concerns that I hear across the district, but we've got to set up a better system of funding our campaigns to break the linkage between big money and the policies that we see being approved in Congress. Thanks for the question.
I'm Sarah Donnelly, and I have a very far out idea, but I'm very distressed at what's going on right this minute, as everybody is, about the shutdown. And the power that the Speaker of the House and the Senate have, where Mitch McConnell can prevent a vote, because I'm convinced that if the vote were taken on these bills about the shutdown and opening departments, they would pass. And if we can't reform such that, let's say, 20% of the delegates and the senators want the bill to be heard, that it can be heard, I think that power is much too strong. I don't know whether anybody's thought about that or talked about that, but when you're in power, you like having the power, but when you're not in power, it's not a good thing, and it isn't fair, anyhow.
Yeah. I think you hit on something very important. I believe that majority should rule, and that's why I supported some reforms to the House rules so that we'd return to regular order when we're considering major pieces of legislation. You know, you saw a tax bill that was passed not too long ago without any public process, without any committee hearings, or without members of Congress really understanding what they were voting on. And that was totally driven by leadership and by an agenda that was top down. I think we have to empower individual members to be heard from the bottom up, because they're your voice ultimately. You know, the appropriations bills that we passed on January 3rd and that we've been passing one by one since then in the House, are ones that have already been broadly agreed to by the Senate. You know, these bills passed with 96 votes in the U.S. Senate, but yet Leader McConnell won't bring them up for a vote today. So that's very disconcerting, because he is giving away, you know, his authority, his responsibility within the legislative branch to the president, who doesn't want these bills considered. I think if we just took an up or down vote in both chambers, we'd have more votes than we needed to override a presidential veto if he decided to do that. So we've got to get to that point. I think that it's important that members of Congress, that senators are hearing from the American people. I think the fact that we're now in the longest shutdown in history, where workers are going unpaid, where very critical services are not being provided, they've got to hear the message in short order. I'm interested to see, in talking with members of the House and Senate when I go back to Washington early next week, the messages that they've been hearing over the weekend. Because if it's anything like what I'm hearing here, I think they're going to be a lot more predisposed to wanting to bring this thing to an end.
Lester Costratum. Hi. I'd like to go beyond what you said. What about the president position? I mean, is there any discussions of, I know there's supposed to be checks and balances, et cetera, but it seems like this is a new situation, you know, a different president, and I kind of question the authority that the president has and put, you know, over some of the other stuff. So is there any, I know it's premature, but is there any kind of discussion of the Democrats, given the situation, thinking down the road of trying to change some things to even counterbalance better the authority of the president?
We have been having those discussions. In fact, one of the things that makes me feel better, even though things are divided, even though we're in this longest shutdown in history, is to meet some of the newer members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, because they all appear to be very well grounded in their districts. They all appear to be very open to having the type of discussions that I think are responsible. And they are open to pushing back against anyone, whether it's the leaders in Congress or the President of the United States. We need to give them the space to be able to do that. And I'm looking for people to be putting country first. I mean, I think I got elected, not by accident, but because the people of New Hampshire were looking for checks and balances. That, you know, the district might have voted for Donald Trump in the 2016 election, but they didn't want him to have a blank check in Congress. They wanted people who were going to do what's best for the district, not what was best for the president himself. And so that's what I think we need to be looking for, that having individuals empowered so that they can represent their own districts and not give away the legislative power to the executive branch. I'll say this, it's important that we do have the types of conversations that will lead us to enhanced security to keep this country safe. We do need to have the conversations that can ensure that we have comprehensive immigration reform that will respect the dignity of people who are here, will allow the dreamers to become full-fledged citizens of this country who know no other country than the United States of America, and will recognize that immigrants built this country, that they're such an essential part of our economy, of our way of life, of our communities. There is broad support in Congress for immigration reform. We saw a bill that passed the Senate not too long ago that John McCain helped champion. That was a bipartisan bill that did a lot of those things that I just mentioned. It's not coming up right now. In fact, not much is coming up right now because everything's been ground to a halt. We've got to get this shutdown out of the way. Then let's have those larger conversations about some of those issues that may be a little bit trickier, but I think there continues to be consensus about how to move forward.
Hi, I'm Kate Sermon from Dover, new to Dover, and I did canvass for you with only 2 months here and found my way around Dover. I'm also a veteran, and I have a couple questions and one thing. Oh, I'm sorry. I appreciate the fact that when I called your office, you had a live person able to speak to me and not a phone tree. I think that's really important. And in trying to solve all these issues, of which there are many, do you, and having relocated from Colorado, do you plan to meet and speak with folks from other representatives from other parts of the country to get more you know, there's issues out west that are not the same as here, but equally important. And do you ever, or is it custom to meet with with like Senator Hassan and Senator Shaheen on things? I don't know, I know everybody's busy, but is that part of a way to make sure that issues are being covered in dealing with all of these issues?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And I think we benefit from being a small state, right? So we can all stick together in a way that maybe you can't if you're California or New York. So the delegation from New Hampshire, we have been working together already on some issues that are important. We'll be meeting quite a bit. We all know each other. We're on text exchange every now and then about issues that are coming up. So I think we're wanting as much as possible to present a united front for the people of New Hampshire, and want to be using our power on both the House and Senate side and bring it to bear for the people of this state. I have been getting to know people from other states across the country. And to the extent that there are issues that are important here that are found other places, I'm going to be wanting to look for those partners and helping to move forward legislation. So whether it's looking for an individual who has similar challenges in the VA in their district, or an individual representing a district that's being ravaged by the opioid crisis in the way that New Hampshire continues to be. Let's find those partners, and I think typically they can be from across the aisle, but yet you can see eye to eye on how to move forward on an issue that has an important impact on people here. Thank you for the question. Yes? We got a mic coming here.
David Spiegel, Newmarket. I have been a supporter of yours from the beginning, and also did some volunteering during the campaign. We all know that we can't control what President Trump does, or should I say the Democrats can't, and the Democrats can't control what the Senate Majority Leader does. We do know that the Democrats have some control over themselves. And what concerns me is that a Speaker of the House was selected, based largely on her strong grasp over the membership of the Democratic membership and her many years of experience in the Congress, by suggesting that she was great at getting the votes, you know, at whipping up the votes when necessary, and also that she was great at fundraising. Well, she's not great at speaking for the party, though, and young, vibrant, intelligent people like yourself are. And what I'm wondering is, when I've witnessed Nancy Pelosi give messages that are not good messages for the party, how can some of the other members of the Congress take a larger role in speaking for the party? A couple of specific examples. She talks about the immorality of the wall. I am not somebody who thinks that a wall is immoral. I may not support the policies of the Trump administration, whether it be how they're treating the asylum seekers or whatever, or I may not support the Trump administration's treatment of immigrants in general. But she gives a message out that doesn't convey that the Democrats consider any security measure that's deemed to be reasonable is appropriate. And the second thing she does is to talk about, well, I'd give them $1. Well, I don't ever see you making that comment in front of any member of the national press, and therefore giving the appearance that the Democrats aren't willing to negotiate. So my question is, how do we get more members of Congress like yourself to get out there in front of the party, so the message nationally is that we have thoughtful people who are able to communicate effectively on behalf of the Democratic Party?
Thanks for the question. Thanks for the question, and thanks for being out there for us during the campaign. Obviously, this is bigger than any one political party, but I think it's important that voters are hearing the message and hearing what we're up to in Washington. And during the talk over leadership and what that would look like going forward, I wasn't ready to give my vote to anyone unless I felt that the new class of members coming into Congress was going to have the ability to do just that, to speak, to be out there, to be the face of the caucus in certain ways. What gives me encouragement is that there are new members who have been empowered to do that, that there are new voices in leadership. I think of someone like Hakeem Jeffries, who's from New York, who's the caucus chair now. He runs our caucus meetings, and he very effectively, I think, can speak for the Democratic caucus. So I think there are a lot of voices who have been brought into the fold with the current leadership team, and I'll continue to look for ways to do just that. I think that, you know, being part of a group with more women, more people of color, more LGBT members of Congress, more veterans than in recent history, it's really critical that we feel that we're not held back. I have the confidence in voting for leadership that that wouldn't be the case. And I think we've got to see, once we move through this initial phase here, where, you know, there's some high-level negotiations going on, obviously, between leaders in Congress and the White House, that we're able to take that platform and move forward. Question here.
Good morning. I don't really have any, like a specific question. What I'd like to do is kind of go over what FAA air traffic controllers are going through right now. And I hope you don't mind. I had the night shift last night, and so I have some notes so I stay on point. Okay, so my name is Andre Jean. I'm a representative of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. I am an air traffic controller. I work at a terminal radar approach control in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and we provide air traffic services to aircraft in Boston, in and out of Boston, Manchester, Portsmouth, and all of the smaller airports in the surrounding area.
Thank you.
We are very proud to do what we do, and we're happy to do it. I and all my fellow controllers are accepted employees. We are required to report to duty regardless of the lapse in funding, and we do not know when we are going to get our next paycheck. We are regular people. We have mortgages, we have other bills, and we have children ranging from newborns to college bound. As you can imagine, the current situation adds anxiety to an already very serious and high-performing profession. Our national airspace system is the gold standard. We work traffic in the safest, most efficient, and most complex airspace on the world, and we are very proud to do what we do for the public. This national airspace system is experiencing effects of the current shutdown. The FAA is currently in a staffing crisis. We are at a 30-year low of certified air traffic controllers. We have seen a reduction in controllers the last 6 years. And our current training process has virtually ground to a halt. Our academy in Oklahoma City is shut down. Training progress in facilities across the country has been significantly impacted. Right now, we are feeling the effects of this current shortage of staffing in no insignificant way by the the shutdowns of the past and sequestration. The damage from this shutdown to our training efforts has already been done, and we will no doubt be feeling these effects for months and for years to come. On top of that, the FAA is in the middle of currently in the middle of its largest modernization project in its history. We are trying to go from a ground-based radar navigation system to a space-based satellite navigation. And many more modernization projects too that not just have to do with that, but have to do with safety. And a lot of those projects have been stopped. Workers have been sent home, and trainers have been sent on furlough. So what I and all of my fellow controllers are asking of our elected leaders like yourself is to end this government shutdown. Let us go back to business as usual. Let us go back to working traffic in the safest, most complex, most efficient airspace in the world. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing that up and for representing your members, and please tell them that I'm thinking about them, that I'm willing to continue to vote on appropriations that are going to get you all back to work and get you paid. I think that's really important. I was talking to the member of Congress, a new congresswoman from Oklahoma City last night, and she was talking about the training academy that's in her district and the fact that people have been sent home right now, even though we're at a point where we need to train new people up to make sure that we're fully staffed moving forward. So if any of you are traveling on a plane anytime soon, please thank the TSA workers as you go through security. And please know that the folks that keep your plane up in the air and make sure that you travel safe aren't getting paid right now. And the redundancies that need to be built into the system to ensure that safety are being stretched real thin, as you say. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Yes?
I have a simple question.
We got a, here we go.
Simple question is, will Donald Trump be impeached? Isn't it about time?
The investigation that Mueller is leading obviously continues to move forward, continues to make headlines in certain ways. We've seen indictments, we've seen convictions, we've seen guilty pleas. We need to make sure that he can finish his work and put everything out on the table so that our country has a full reckoning of everything that's transpired and any additional crimes that might have been committed. So the questions of collusion, of obstruction of justice, strike at the heart of having a government that functions that we can have faith in. And if we're to put all that behind us, we've got to make sure that the work of his investigation can be finished. I'll support legislation to do that. And then let's make those tough calls once everything's been put out on the table. Yes?
Given that Mitch McConnell has said he won't bring any bill to the floor that Donald Trump won't sign, do you have any insight as to how you think this is going to shake out in the end? Can you tell us anything about how you think it might end and the shutdown?
Well, we've seen a number of senators who have heard from their districts, who have heard from their states, go on record saying they want to vote on a bill to end it now, vote on the funding levels that they've already supported, including Susan Collins from Maine. So there is a growing chorus, I believe, and I think once we're back in town next week, I think you'll see some more begin to feel the pressure of doing the right thing and of supporting these bills. So I think the leader, you know, he's a good bean counter, and when it comes right down to it, when he sees the direction that the American people are going in, their lack of support for this continued political shutdown, I guess I think there is a good shot that things might change. You know, I'm not willing to give up hope right now because when I come to a room like this, when I hear the calls that are coming into our offices at really high volumes, when I read the emails and letters that are coming in, I think people are seeing this for what it is, which is shutting down government for political purposes. And that can only go on for so long. So I'm sorry that so many people are caught up in this, that their livelihoods are caught up in this, that it's doing damage to the services that are provided. So I'm hopeful we'll see what happens next week and if he changes his tune at all.
Hi. Congratulations again on your victory and for the work you're doing for us already. I work with someone whose husband is in the Coast Guard, and they are currently stationed in New Jersey at the large Coast Guard training facility. And speaking with her yesterday, it's amazing what the community down there has done to support the Coast Guard. I mean, all of the restaurants are offering 50% off. They're actually creating a food bank on the base so that families can get food. It's again another example of how the American people always pull together when there's an issue. At the same time, it's ridiculous that it's gotten to this point that the people that are charged with protecting our borders have to go get their food from a food bank. She was, prior to being in New Jersey, they were stationed in Newcastle, and she was telling me that as much as they're concerned, they live on government housing, they don't have rents. And she said she really worries about the people that are based in Newcastle because there's no government housing. I just wanted to mention that to you, and if you haven't checked in on those people, perhaps that's something you might want to do, because there are Coast Guard people that are based in Newcastle that are struggling right now. And, you know, they're our neighbors. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing up the example of the Coast Guard, and that's been something that's not lost on me, and we will be getting to meet with them in very short order. It's actually a bill that's been filed separately to make sure our Coast Guard get paid. I think we should make sure that every federal worker that's working without pay right now, everyone who's been furloughed, gets paid. And if there's a bill that comes up to do that, I will certainly support it. But what's happened over the last 3 weeks is that we've seen people pulling together and stepping up to support individuals who are going through hard times. So whether it's providing food, whether it's local credit unions that are willing to provide some financing for individuals in absence of a paycheck, people are trying to do the right thing here. What we need is the leaders at the top to be doing the right thing. And until that happens, you know, there's a lot of good out there in the world and a lot of good across the state of New Hampshire. People want to try to help each other out. But it really should come right down to people owning up to their political responsibility in Washington, D.C. That's the only thing that's going to put this behind us and try to prevent it from ever happening again.
Jeff Wilson, Stratham, New Hampshire. Obviously New Hampshire, but so I believe I've heard that both houses have passed legislation that everyone will get paid once the funding is straightened out. Is that correct? So then my next thought is Washington is always doing crazy things and calling an apple an orange, whatever. So can you get creative and do something like pass legislation to give all the furloughed workers interest-free loans, that maybe every other week you loan them money that happens to coincide with what their paycheck would have been. And then when they get their lump sum payment, when everything's straightened out, they pay back their interest-free loans. Could we do something creative like that so people aren't under such hardship?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. One of the things that I have been looking at the last couple days is around unemployment. You know, if someone is working full-time but is getting paid $0, they can't file for unemployment, which could help them get through this period of time. So there needs to be a legal change to allow them to do that. I was dealing with an individual, our office was, who works for the IRS, and she wanted to take advantage of a loan that a credit union was offering. Submitted a letter, her furlough letter. It wasn't specific enough for the bank, but of course there's no one back at the IRS to write a new letter so that she can get the loan that they were generously offering for federal workers. So there's got to be another way to make sure that we can float these people that may be experiencing tough times now. So we'll look into that, and if you have any other ideas of, you know, how to make things work for these families as they struggle, we're certainly open to it.
I just want to make an announcement. We have time for maybe one more question.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, and appreciate everything you're doing. Recently, we saw an interview with a very senior Border Patrol person down on the southern border, and that interview was just so, his responses were so logical that, yes, we need a little bit of permanent structure. Yes, we need a lot more agents. Yes, we need a lot more electronic surveillance and things like that. And it just came across as so real. There's no dollars that were attached to it, but I've heard nothing about, you know, Congress bringing these people in to testify and eliciting the information that they have hands-on. And I also can't believe that Homeland Security doesn't have a long-term strategy, long-term study showing really what is needed to protect the country.
Thanks for making that point. I think we do need to talk about things logically. And as we talk about spending taxpayer dollars, making investments in keeping this country safe, we should be putting that money where it can best serve the needs of the country. I listened to the other day a gentleman from Texas who represents more border than anyone else in Congress. He's a Republican. He opposes the president's wall because he knows that there are ladders and tunnels, there are ways we can cut through walls, and that we're much better served by investing in technology at checkpoints, investing in manpower along our southern border as a way to stop drugs and individuals that would do harm to this country from coming through. So I think we do need to have those conversations. We just shouldn't be giving someone a blank check. Someone who served on the executive council, we only invested in transportation infrastructure projects when we had the specifics, when we knew where the dollars were going and what the impact of a project would be. And so I think it's foolish for Congress to throw money after something just to solve a political problem, as opposed to doing the due diligence that I think we're sent there to do, which is what's the best use of those dollars to try to keep this country safe. The DEA says that in terms of illegal drugs reaching this country, the vast majority of those drugs are coming through in semis, through border checkpoints, or by boat. A wall's not going to prevent those drugs from coming in. We know that most of the overdose deaths we're seeing in New Hampshire are from fentanyl, and much of that comes from China through the mail. So we need to be smart about how we stop illegal drugs from coming in. The wall is not going to solve that problem. I think it's going to create new ones, and I think it's important that we do use logic as we approach issues like that. Thank you. Yes?
I've been hearing that the amount of money already appropriated for the wall has not even been spent, and we're looking for some ridiculous amount to add to that. My big concern is the number of families and children in detention that are not being served, and we've now furloughed immigration lawyers and folks all over to provide for that, and we've created a monster, and we're asking more money to do nonsense. I just don't know where to go with that, but I'm concerned about those families and children who've been in detention, who've been moved around the country, and what do we as a country do and say, we're not going to continue treating people like this?
Yeah. Thanks for that comment. And I'll just say, a shutdown only makes us weaker. It only compromises security and services. And we've got to stop tying up political issues with government funding. And I think we should have and must have a more meaningful conversation about how we have immigration policies on the books that adhere to the values of the United States of America. I think we've got to do that. And the policy of family separation has no place in the United States of America. Yes.
Hi, I'm Angela. We're from Newmarket, and I had a quick point and then a question for you. It's hard to get beyond the shutdown and you know what the president is doing, but I am anxious that the Congress take up issues that don't involve oversight, like infrastructure, putting out bills for infrastructure and climate change and some of the other things that have not been done and we're desperate for. So I just wanted, that was my point, that we not be completely obsessed with the oversight process, of which there's plenty. But, and the other question I have has to do with term limits. I read that on the Senate side, there's been a bill introduced for term limits for members of Congress. I think 2 terms for senators, and I can't remember the number of terms for on the House side, but I really support that, and I was kind of surprised and a little suspicious about that piece of legislation. But I really support term limits, and I wondered what your thoughts were. I think that a lot of people have talked about excess power here, and that's cumulative. You know, Mitch McConnell has, I don't know how many years, what, 30 years or something like that. And the Speaker also. And so that would, help to alleviate some of that and would also maybe stop the corporations from owning our government. So I just wonder what your thoughts were, whether you would support term limit legislation.
With respect to your first point on oversight, there's a constitutional responsibility for Congress to be providing oversight. It really hasn't been doing that the last couple years. So these agency heads, whether it's, whether it is the EPA, which is being run by a coal lobbyist right now, watering down regulations that are polluting the air over New Hampshire, Congress has a role to hold that individual's feet to the fire, to make sure that you're understanding what's happening within your government and trying to stop policies that run against what's best for the people here. We can do that in a way that's not political, and I think we must. And we can do it in a way where we can still focus on other critical priorities, whether it's lowering the cost of prescription drugs, whether it's raising the minimum wage, whether it's expanding access to affordable health care, whether it's ensuring that we protect individuals in the public square by passing common sense gun safety reforms. I think we can do that, and we're going to see legislation to address many of those things in the early weeks and months of this Congress. And so I look forward to being a part of that. Thank you. Maybe one more? Yes, sir.
Yes, hello, Matt Haggerty, Exeter. There is a lot of material that outside of the mainstream media that kind of gets shunted aside. And there's a popular documentary called Unacknowledged. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Okay, it's available on Netflix and Amazon. And the basic premise is through various research and testimony of whistleblowers, it is proven that there is an alternative energy source that is being suppressed by, or unacknowledged refers to various programs that are underneath the radar of Congress and the law. And even the president cannot get briefed on these things. That's all in the documentary. So my thought, well, my question was, had you seen the documentary? My thought is, these various issues, energy issues of this suppressed energy, which would basically change the entire world, because it is a free energy source that, well, I might as well say it. The documentary is about alien contact, which I understand there's starting to be news stories in the mainstream media more and more. So what I would like to know is if these things which are seen as fringe, if they can somehow be like, if someone like yourself were to watch that documentary and think about these issues, and as these problems are being approached, this energy source could be in the background, in the back of your mind, because it is a limitless source of resources. For instance, if this energy source was made available, then things like the wall, things like congressional, the shutdown and stuff like that may not, let me restate that. The energy sources that are being repressed are going to change the entire world. And this is looked at as crazy and off to the side, so on and so forth. So I would like to see that, you have to keep going forward with the system that we have, dealing with the shutdown and the immediacy. But I would like to see that somehow, over all of that, that all the people in government start to become aware of these things and are not ridiculed about it, and that they can start to develop courage to come out and say, why are these things being suppressed? They are being suppressed to support the corporatocracy and the $200 trillion in resources that the corporatocracy controls.
Well, I will look for that documentary, and I am still looking for Intelligent Life in Washington, D.C. But I appreciate you raising that. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all. I'm going to stick around here for a little bit. Those of you who want to get home and see the game and get situated in your lucky seat so that the Pats win, do that. But otherwise, please be in touch with me, with our office, over the coming couple of years. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what's on your minds, what you're seeing. And if there's any way we can assist you, please call on us. Thank you so much.